Katsiayo, and thank you for joining us in the session 6 of 12 of Entrepreneurial Opportunities and Cultural Tourism. Today we're going to be discussing financial planning resources for individual entrepreneurs and business. Today's guests include Native and woman entrepreneur Roxanne Best and Doran Walkingstick, who is replacing guest presenter Russ Siegel of Sequoia Fund. These guests will add value in our discussion surrounding funding resources available for small businesses, including grants, CDFI loans, and business plan competitions. Next slide, please. Thank you for joining us today. Tatsalach. Inam Muniktuas Kusnim Kesnuat, Soyapo Muniktuas Station Morphine. What I said is good afternoon. My name is One Who Takes Care of Water, also known as Station Morphine. I would like to start out with a slide that says, remember who you are each day. In the past and into the future, we must always remember that we, as Indigenous people, live in a matriarch society, where women offer primary power positions in roles in political leadership, moral authority, social privileges, and control of property. In the lower left-hand corner, there is a picture of a Nimipu spokeswoman. She comes from the Redbird Band of Nimipu Nation, that is the Nez Perce Nation, and her name is Lizzie Cayuse. She is a part of my grandfather's side of the family, Larry Idaho Green. On the right-hand side, we're looking at Chief Pile of Clouds. He is a spiritual leader, a Nimipu spiritual leader. And in the middle, you can get a glimpse of the territorial homeland of the Nimipu Nez Perce. I always want to start out here because it's just such a great reminder of us as individual sovereign Native people to always be reminded of where we are and who we come from. Again, in this webinar session, you will learn the importance of financial planning, how to fund your tourism business through grants, competitions, and special loan programs. There are many great resources available to Native entrepreneurs. Sometimes it just gets a little bit overwhelming as far as where to start. I know for my Nez Perce Tourism LLC business, it was really a struggle to put all my thoughts into a solid foundation, a solid game plan. And with the resources that were available right in my backyard, I was able to put my thoughts into a game plan and an action plan. And a big part of this was funding resources. And how am I going to resource and fund this really neat plan and idea I have to promote cultural tourism within Nimipu country? One of the neat things that I learned really quickly is that the Small Business Development Center in our area had a ton of resources from Business Planning 101 to financial success, both business and professional and personal, and being able to tie in those three financial plans together into one. Because when it comes to Native American entrepreneurs, at the end of the day, it's important that we do make business decisions also based on our personal goals. And so as an LLC, which am I, right now I'm going through the tax process. And with this tax process, if you are labeled as an LLC, you are going to have to claim your net profit for the year in with your personal taxes. And so it's really important as you go through the process of a business license and you register with your federal and state authorities that you are in that you know exactly what the difference is between corporations, LLCs, sole proprietors, and these are things that the Small Business Development Center can help walk you through. Another great resource for me has been my local Nez Perce Tribe CDFI. And in 2011, the Nez Perce Tribe conducted a market analysis which demonstrated the need for financial services and product investment to address financial and business development in Nimipu country. And market analysis is something that we covered in one of our previous webinars, and this is something that's really important to ensure the success and the longevity of your company as well. So I'm using some key business terms that we'll want to make note of and make sure that we familiarize ourselves with these terms as we do start to unfold our cultural tourism businesses. But the Native American NCFI and the Nez Perce tribe was awarded almost $120,000 in 2012 from the U.S. Treasury, and we were able to get the Native American Nimipu Fund NCFI in motion for my nation. And this has been extremely helpful because they not only offer loans, they not only help you with their startup companies as far as resources for Indianpreneurship and things like that, but it's neat because all of these resources so far as getting to your point of opening your business have been free. Now understand when you do take a loan, or if you do take a loan, that you will have some type of interest tied to that. And mostly for CDFIs, for Nimipu Fund in particularly, they require a 2-year open date. And I'm just getting ready to celebrate my 1-year anniversary, March 29th. So I've gotten 1 year under my belt. Possibly after next year, I may be putting in for a loan, and that isn't for my startup, but it's for another branch of Nez Perce tourism, and that is rafting the riverbeds of the Nez Perce. So what I would like to do is I would like to extend my reach as far as promoting cultural tourism within Nimipu country, because we have tons of tributaries and watersheds that flow into our homeland. And these are things that are written into our 1855 treaty that I have rights to as far as accessing and transporting guests to, just like we have done with the Lewis and Clark expedition back in 1804. So in Nimipu, we have always been guides, just like you in your indigenous territories. Even if you live off your reservation, you have that DNA instilled in you to know your landscape, to be one with Mother Earth, to be able to share your experiences in a good way with people, and to invite people to your homeland. And one thing I always like to share is that, you might not be Nimipu Nez Perce, but you do have indigenous blood in you, and Nez Perce are completely different than some of the values that maybe the Cherokee hold, or the Navajo, or whatever it is you might come from. And so you do have things to offer in a cultural tourism business. Maybe you aren't surrounded by rivers like I am, but you may have things that are tied specifically with your nation that you could help other people understand. And so for years, hundreds of years now, other people have been sharing our stories as Native people from their perspective. And it's so much more powerful and truthful, not only for our guests to realize, the great things that we've endured, some of the atrocities we've endured as Indigenous people, but also the cultural identity it gives your nation. It gives your youth, especially when you're able to link the elders to the youth, and we pair them up in a way that's it's really powerful to get our youth excited and to remind them who they are, where they come from, and that they are to be proud of that. Because in society it's very challenging to be pulled in all these different directions, but knowing that at the basis of who they are and their identity, the core that lives inside of them, they're Indigenous, and they need to be proud of that. And so there are lots of different loan programs around your specific area. I know mine because I was very proactive in seeking out what are resources I can utilize. And one of the hardest things for an individual, a sovereign person, is to reach out and ask for help. And in my personal and my business life, at one point, I would never be brave enough to reach out to anybody for help. And the moment that I crushed that fear and I decided to be transparent and honest and raise my hand and reach out and ask people for help, it's people like the IDRS Acorn Project that have resources that you can tap into, who will help you just surround yourself with a network of people who are supportive. Same with IANTA and other programs that you might be very familiar with, who surround themselves around cultural tourism. But I talked a little bit about business plans and how important they are. So today, sometimes the traditional business plan isn't as needed per se as you would maybe just a business model canvas. And so the business model canvas is something that we also covered in a past webinar, and focusing specifically on that value proposition. Of course, feasibility studies and all of these things come into place when it comes to that business model canvas, but there are a lot of people for loan opportunities or even grant opportunities that might want to see a glimpse of what you have in your business plan. So making sure that you have all of these things organized before you launch your business will help with your success of the longevity of your company. So the business plan competitions, those are extremely neat because you've already have all those resources in place once you get to this certain point. And it's neat because there's business plan competitions all over the Pacific Northwest, and that's where I'm located. And so we have college business plan competitions. We have city business plan competitions. And what's neat is that they're generally categorized into different fields which you might fit into. There could be youth competitions, there could be college, it could be individual entrepreneurs, it can be women in business, whatever that might be. You could find yourself finding funding resources through these business plan competitions, whether they're non-tribal competitions or tribal. I've seen in my personal walk of this life that a lot of the people, the non-tribal folks, are seeking this insight and this connection with their neighbors, the indigenous neighbors, so they want to know more. And just with our singing, drumming, and dancing our songs, even they can feel the power in those. And so if you come to a competition with a strong business model canvas, business plan, a beautiful pitch, and you have a value proposition that is just so compelling and so strong, you are most likely to, either win the competition, and even if you don't win that competition, these business professionals who sit on those panels to judge you are extremely resourceful for their feedback they might have. Maybe you are a wonderful business planner, but your strongest trait isn't selling that business, or maybe public speaking is tremendously hard for you. This is when you go and you look at your drawing board and you say, who can I bring in as a partner, a subcontractor, an employee to help me out and to help strengthen these weaknesses. And so it's just beautiful that the business competitions is another great resource that we can utilize as individual entrepreneurs. Also, just real quick, I want to talk a little bit about grants. And the SBA's Office of Native American Affairs also provides grant funding through its Management and Technical Assistance Program. So depending on your area, these grants may be as large as $100,000. And again, this is the SBA's Office of Native American Affairs. And so there's grant opportunities available, there's loan programs available to you, and of course business plan competitions is extremely important as well. And those business plan competitions are usually free. You don't usually have to pay for those. So next I would like to go ahead and introduce a guest. His name is Doreen Walking Stick from the Sequoia Fund. Dorian, if you will go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about CDFIs, please.
Okay, sure thing. So like Stacia said there, my name's Dorian Walking Stick. I'm the account manager at Sequoia Fund here in Cherokee, North Carolina. Um, my job essentially covers just about anything to do with the loans that come through our organization. I take in the applications and the additional required documents for underwriting purposes. I'll look over their business plan, cash flow projections, tax returns, bank statements, just about you name it, they'll turn it in. And if the loan request looks good, then I make the presentation and work a recommendation to our board of directors for approval on the loan. And then the cycle just continues throughout the year. But what are CDFIs? So CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution. The overall goal of a CDFI is to expand economic opportunities in low-income, underserved communities by providing access to financial products and services for the local residents and businesses in your service area. And CDFIs are certified through the U.S. Treasury and have the ability to apply for grant funding from the federal government's CDFI fund. And in our area of Cherokee, we're we're also able to tap into an organization called Cherokee Preservation Foundation for additional grant funding. But of course, this foundation is limited to the 7 western counties of North Carolina. But Sequoia Fund has the special designation of being a native CDFI, so the majority of our lending is geared toward enrolled members of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. But our commercial loan products are not limited to the enrolled members. It applies for everybody. So as long as the clients are located in the 7 western counties in North Carolina, then they at least have a shot at applying through our organization. And so at Sequoia Fund, we offer the small business loans for startups and expansions. We also provide housing rehab loans and credit builder loans. And I believe we are contemplating offering auto loans in the future as well, as our executive director, Russ Siegel, is always searching for new products to offer to our community. When he sees a need, he usually tries to jump right on it. The small business loans could be for a number of things like business acquisitions, leasehold, building improvements, machinery and equipment, inventory, working capital, utility deposits, legal and professional fees, and insurance. So just a number of business needs that individuals can come to us for. But some CDFIs are involved in traditional banking services like savings accounts, personal loans, mortgages, etc. But this usually depends on the size of the CDFI. So our organization is a small staff of 5. So our products may be a little more limited than others, so we don't necessarily provide those depository accounts. But as for the services that we provide, we partner with our Tribal Economic Development Office, as well as the surrounding small business centers in order for potential clients to utilize them if they need guidance in starting a business. And these entities are valuable resources as they help our clients develop business plans, including cash flow projections for the business, and help round up any necessary documents that to apply for a loan through us. So like I said, we're looking at their tax returns, business entity documents, things like the articles of incorporation, organization, just make sure that the business is set up correctly, bylaws, management agreements, just things like that, and personal financial statements. We'll take a look at those, and really any financial statements that a business can provide to us, we'll take a look at them if they're available. We will also host luncheons for clients if there are requests on a certain area of operating a business. So I know in the past that we have provided training for customer service for some of our clients upon request. So there's always that option, and then there's always the one-on-one meetings that we do with our borrowers if necessary. And we will also provide personal finance counseling in conjunction with our credit builder loans, or whoever seeks the counseling really, and usually comes in the form of training on budgeting, saving, credit counseling, and things of that nature. But that's essentially what CDFI is and sort of the function that our organization does. But how a CDFI differs from traditional banks, typically CDFIs differ from a traditional bank in the sense of our ability to adapt our lending guidelines to the needs of the borrower. So for example, we have the ability to get creative with our borrowers in regards to collateral. So at times a borrower may not have ideal collateral for a loan, so assets that are not heavily depreciated or hold a significant value, but they may have other assets that may not be acceptable to a bank, but acceptable in our eyes. So in other words, we'd be able to collateralize the loan with whatever the bank couldn't. So in our area, that's usually Lynn, I just now seen your message. Can you hear me fine just now? Okay. So where I lost my place here. Okay, the collateral there. So one instance for what's sort of special for our location here in Cherokee is that we're able to collateralize per capita, and that's the gaming distributions from Harris Cherokee Casino. and that's something that a traditional bank won't be able to do here in our area. So that's a plus sign for our enrolled members. And we also try to work with potential borrowers if they don't quite meet our guidelines, whereas a bank would likely just flat out turn down a client and they would just sort of be out of it from then on. So we tend to tell our clients that if they're not quite ready for a loan, we'll say that a no right now doesn't mean a no forever. So if you're looking at the 5 C's of credit, character, capacity, capital, and conditions and collateral, and a client meets the majority of this criteria, but it is lacking in other areas, then we'll let the client know and say, hey, you don't quite meet our guidelines in these areas, but let's see if we can work out a solution here to try and get you to a point where we can get an approval on the loan. So typically, I guess the bank are not so cooperative with borrowers, or just sort of cut and dry on things. But a lot of times, the hindrance can be the client's credit score. Our credit score threshold is set at 550 for our commercial loans. In my eyes, it's a fairly low threshold, but our target market typically has limited or poor credit history. So there are times when a client doesn't quite meet this threshold, and a traditional bank is just going to give you a straight up no. But part of our services here at Sequoia Fund include the credit counseling piece. So in that scenario, we would work with the client by providing training to improve their credit scores over a period of time, to the point where we would be able to approve their loan request. And another key difference between a CDFI and a traditional bank is the loan risk that each one is willing to take on. So for example, a traditional bank will not even consider a commercial application for a startup business, whereas a CDFI would be able to consider funding a startup business if certain criteria are met, of course. So typically, CDFIs are involved in riskier loans, being that we do a lot of our lending in startups. But the overall, the reason that we're able to maintain this flexibility is because CDFIs are not as heavily regulated as traditional banks are. Traditional bank is usually pretty strict with their internal lending policies as it is, but they are also required to jump through who knows how many hoops because of various regulations placed on them by federal banking regulators. So traditional banks, they're FDIC insured, and I think that would pretty much explain the reasoning behind their heavily regulated industry. But as far as where our CDFIs, where they're located, looks like on slide 6 here, I'm not too familiar with the CDFIs located out of our little region in North Carolina, but looks like Lynn provided us with a nice little map here, and it pinpoints all the native CDFIs across the country here. And yeah, if you just do a little bit of research on CDFIs, and you're bound and determined to just bump into one, I believe. So case in point, in our little region in North Carolina, Western North Carolina to be exact, there are 2 CDFIs, Sequoia Fund being the lone native CDFI in North Carolina, and then there's Mountain BizWorks, they're located in Asheville. But I think Lynn also provided us with an extensive list of other locations, if I'm correct on that one. Okay. But
Okay,
as far
Dorian,
as
did you have anything else to add?
I think I was just going to provide a few examples for, I guess, sort of the tourism businesses that Sequoia Fund has funded in the past.
Oh, yes, please do.
A lot of the traffic that is generated here in Cherokee is mainly due to the Harrah's Cherokee Casino and Hotel, but a lot of people also come to see the beautiful mountains that we get to call home and to become engulfed in our Cherokee culture during their stay. And it also helps if there is an entrance to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park right on the edge of town, so that's absolutely a bonus. And But anyway, let me get back to the tourism business that we funded. So in the past, we funded a charter motor coach business that offered its services to colleges, churches, schools, tour companies, businesses, individuals, and the list goes on to the amount of people that they've served. Um, we've also funded a few of the local hotels / motels in Cherokee. Case in point, one of the major hotels in our little town here needed an elevator, and we were able to provide a loan for that. And I think we provided funds for our project that we call Downtown Revitalization for various businesses in Cherokee, essentially to improve the various facades and the signage for local business owners. And so no one wants to see a rundown building with bad signage, so we took the initiative back in the day. We funded fly fishing shops in the rivers, or as the rivers in our area tend to draw a decent crowd as well. A few restaurants in our area have also came to us, and we've been able to go through the process with them as well. We've provided funds to a few breweries, a campground or two, and interesting enough, our local Cherokee Indian Museum has received funds from us as well, and they continue to utilize our loan programs. We funded an escape room, coffee shops, a few food trucks, a pool hall, and a paintball business. And we also fund local artists in relation to their crafts. So we're talking basket weaving, pottery, silversmith, beading, jewelry, and the list goes on. Tourists usually like to come in and see them working on their crafts, and our organization actually holds a basket and pottery festival for all to come and watch the artists perfect their craft. But I think that's just about it. All I had there for the world of CDFIs there. I think that's my little spiel there.
Hey, Stacia, this is Lynn Wilson. I just want to let you know that your microphone is muted, so we can't hear you.
Oh, thank you, Lynn, for that reminder. So this next slide, we're going to talk about business plan competitions, and it reads at the top, Morphine claims top prize at LCSE State Entrepreneur Challenge. So December 5th of last year, I decided to go ahead and go for one of these business entrepreneur competitions, and I won. I didn't only win the entrepreneur category, but I also won the pitch off category. And it was neat because behind the foundation of what I wanted to accomplish was a hand drummer. And that hand drummer helped enhance the pitch off, I think, tremendously. So when we started the pitch off, we literally had 3 minutes to sell our service, our product, our plan. And we had 3 minutes during the categorized entrepreneur challenge, and we had 3 minutes during the pitch off. And so the top people of each category went to the pitch off and then again competed against each other. And so I came home with a check for $1,000 for the entrepreneur challenge, and I came home with another check for $1,000 for the overall pitch off. And you can see in the photograph that I'm dressed in my jingle dress, my regalia. I have my eagle feathers and my furs in. But hand drummer was very important to have as a partner to just help enhance that entrance. So I came in dancing my way to the front of the pitch off to gain the attention of not only the audience, but most importantly, the penalists who were to judge me. But it was neat because just for this entrepreneurship challenge, there was $5,000 in prize money, and I took almost half of that home with me to use for whatever I needed within my company. So that was really neat. And so what I've done is I've allocated those funds for advertising in 2020. Although $2,000 will cover maybe a quarter of advertising needed, I thought that was a darn good running start for 2020. But what I did is I had my grand opening in March 29th, and you know, I started gaining that confidence in being able to share my story from a perspective that everybody could feel and could hear. And so there's so much power in our presentation that we have when we talk about our cultural identity, our history, when we tie people to the landscape that we are connected to. I thought it was beautiful earlier that Dorian shared information about, you know, fly fishing opportunities. There was hotel opportunities, and all of this is directly related to travel. I mean, people travel from across the world to come to your homeland to fish, to maybe hunt, to overnight, to experience. I mean, he did mention too about some of the national parks available in your guys' areas. And I know for me, for my market research that I've conducted, that the Yosemite to Sequoia to Yellowstone travel corridors are huge, especially for our international guests. I mean, let's face it, our international guests typically take 2 weeks off at a time for their travel, and when they come to the U.S., they will hit the national parks. And so the national park is a big, great partnership opportunity for us to get involved in as cultural entrepreneurs and tourism. But I thought it was really neat that through this entrepreneurship challenge, we not only get an example or get the opportunity to share our business plan with ideas, but I can't tell you how many buys I got from being present in this moment with a multitude of people from different organizations, walks of life, whether it was the educational institution or the corporate institution for the penalist, or even the students. I have a jet boat tour up to Buffalo Wedding, one of our sacred sites, planned for March 21st, and that thing is near sold out, and we have 58 spots. And so people are starting to gain the momentum and growing interest in wanting to know more about cultural tourism and what it has to offer. And like I said earlier, a lot of the cultural tourism will be different in the sense that we'll share different information from different perspectives. And that's really what people are looking for. And so within that pitch off, like I said before, it was neat because we included information on the problem, the solution, which again is that value proposition. What is it that you can give to your guests that nobody else can, and what is it that we can give to them in a way that's inspirational and informational? And so I connect with people through Nez Perce Nimi Pu culture through interactive storytelling, song, drum, and dance. And people love that they're able to connect to that in a way that they can't experience anywhere else in the world. And so I'm just honored and privileged to say that I was the overall winner for that particular challenge and competition, which then gave me access to the next level. The next level was to win $12,000 at the Boise State, the Idaho Entrepreneurship Challenge. So it took it to the state level. But I had to decline because I have 3 tours running that day full of people who are interested in knowing more about the Nimi Pu Nation. There was also competitions up in Washington, in Spokane, Washington, and that was a $5,000 prize as well. And so just looking into kind of your region and seeing what's available for business plan competition, that's something that I would highly recommend because you honestly have all that information already ready to go if you've gone through your business model canvas or even started your business plan. But again, it's really neat practice for you to just share your ideas and to do it in a way that you can gain some insightful feedback from the penalists who typically are, business owners, very successful business owners in my case. So it was nice being able to grab their attention to win, but then to gain that feedback from folks was more powerful than anything. So next up, I want to talk about the RES 2020, the Building Bridges of Opportunity. So this is a youth business plan opportunity. So whether you're a youth or your children or your nieces or nephews, or maybe you're a scholar who has connections with wanting to tie youth into learning more about entrepreneurial opportunities, this RES conference is really important, and it's an economic summit happening right now in Las Vegas. And again, that's actually where our original guest presenter, Russ Siegel, is at. And we're just so thankful that he's down there representing his people and his company, and he gets to probably interact with some of these youth to help give them the courage and the strength to be able to fulfill what it is in their business plan. But just even having the strength to know that you are capable as an entrepreneur, as a sovereign indigenous person, that this isn't nothing new to us. We've always been business people. We've always been able to, whether it's barter or trade or to gain resources or access to the things that we need through communicating. And this is what tourism is all about, and this is what being an entrepreneur is all about. So again, I wanted to talk a little bit about the opportunities for the RES 2020. And you can see at the bottom, the first place teams will receive $7,500, second place $5,000, and third place $2,500. And so it's always neat to have a great mentor that you can practice with to give you direction and guidance when you do commit to doing business plans and competitions and things. But I thought this was neat for RES 2020 to have this because it's a reservation economic summit targeted towards indigenous people. And it's one of the largest conferences in the United States for Native American people. So I don't know if anybody here has been able to attend it. That is something that I'm writing into my budget for next year, and I would love to co-collaborate with my tribe, the Nez Perce tribe and the Nez Perce tribal enterprise, to make sure that we do have a presence there, whether it's a booth promoting our area or whether it's a booth promoting our golf course or our hot springs, or our enterprises, our casino. Let's face it, there's a lot of people who do like that casino experience, but they don't get the cultural experience tied into that. And so that's something that I'm working with right now for my nation, is helping them tie that cultural experience of real people, not machines and folks in a uniform, but actual Native American people dressed in regalia, which isn't that cliche, but being able to provide dinner opportunities and meet and greets and historical site tours and jet boat tours and those things. So knowing that you do have the potential to start your company and then to build those partnerships is very important. But starting our youth out at a young age and being aware of what's available to them is something that's neat, so they have something to strive for. But again, that's happening right now in Las Vegas, and hopefully next year I'll be there. That's something that I am very excited to go and to represent and promote Nez Perce tourism. But next up, I am just so honored to introduce you to Roxanne Beth. She is a Native women-owned entrepreneur. I met her during the Nimipu Fund, our local NCDFI. They offer the Indianpreneurship trainings, and I've taken that training 4 times, and when they offer it again, you best believe I'll be there again, because I learned something every single time. I love that they're able to offer the real life Native experiences within the curriculum that they have, and they guide you in a way that's it's beautiful, because I talk about some of the hardships I've had as a business owner, and just knowing to be aware of those things will help you stay ahead of the game. But Roxanne, she's wonderful. She's a photographer. She also offers yoga classes. She's an instructor. We're getting ready to work on something next month that we'll be able to provide the Nimipu community in the form of a healing movement. And so this is going to be wonderful working with Roxanne, but she really is a guru on, finding grant funding, finding all types of different resources. And she's continuously, her and Lynn from the IDRS Acorn Project, they send me links to things all the time. So make sure too, when you plan out your day or your month, that you do save a little bit of time per week to focus on generating more revenues in the form of grant opportunities, partnerships, and setting up meetings and milestones for you to be able to accomplish. But go ahead, Roxanne. I will go ahead and let you take it away. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacia. I'm so honored to be here and share some of my personal experiences with applying for grants and actually receiving a few grants, And also I get the fun job of debunking a lot of the myths about grants. So in my portion of this presentation, I will go over what a grant actually is, the different places that provide grants, and how a grant works. So what is a grant? So a grant is an amount of money gifted to an organization by another organization, and that money doesn't have to be paid back. Oftentimes, like a loan, you have to pay it back, but grant money is yours. Getting a grant is an extremely competitive process, as Stacia talked about in her section about the business plan competition. It's even more so competitive when you're going for the other types of grants as well that are federally funded. Grants always have to be applied for. I think a lot of people think, oh, there's this free money out there. I'm just going to start a business and I'm going to go get a grant for it. It's an extensive application process. I have yet to see a grant application that was, I just put my name in and my contact information, then I'm entered into the juring process. Every application that I've applied for a grant has required an extensive amount of information about the way that I'm going to use the grant and how it's going to benefit the community. I mean, depending on the type of grant that we're applying for, we have to have all that stuff mapped out. I saw that someone asked the question of Stacia as whether or not you have to have a business plan when you're applying for these grants, and 9 times out of 10, having a business plan is going to put you leaps and bounds ahead of the other applicants who don't have a business plan. So also know that most grants are awarded to support funding for the arts, for the sciences, for educational institutions. Most government grants are meant to help fund ideas and projects providing public services that stimulate the economy. So who are grants awarded to? I got a little bit ahead of myself and I already sort of explained that, but there's different types of grants. Those are like the big grants that we might apply for. But the typically grants are awarded to organizations or startups that are going to stimulate the local economy in some way. And I'm almost positive that part of the reason Stacia won the grant competition is because she's providing an amazing stimulation in her local community, which is what the grants are intended for. A lot of times there's another misconception that grants are meant to, you get the grant year after year, and you might win a grant one year, but it's not guaranteed to continue to support your business. So getting myself back on track with my presentation, if you're a Native American business, like I said before, many of us are thinking, I'm just going to go get grants because there's all these grants available and it's free money and I'm just going to get a ton of grants. And I tell you that not only is the grant application process laborious, but it's also hard to find the right grants that suit what you're doing. And they're very, very few and far between. Most of them are meant for nonprofit organizations. And we see a lot of infomercials and information out there saying that the government has millions of dollars in the form of grants to support Native American businesses. This is true, but keep in mind that the funds offered by the government agencies like the Small Business Administration, the Minority Business Development Agency, the Office of Native American Affairs, those are most often awarded to nonprofit organizations that provide training and technical assistance to people that are starting up and working on skills to be entrepreneurs. The IDRS and ACORN project, this is one of those programs that focuses specifically on providing technical assistance for Native Americans who want to start their own business. So typically those grants are going to those organizations, and the way that we benefit as entrepreneurs is by utilizing those programs. One of the best ways, I work with the Native CDFI here, and I do a lot of the workshops and trainings for them. And I tell people one of the best ways that you can support the program and make sure these things continue is just to show up. Like, be there, be a number in the crowd, and be somebody that's giving feedback and showing progress in your business and your business plans and ideas. So there's different sources of small business grants. There's federal government, local, state, and city governments, corporate programs, and there's tribal programs. So as I mentioned previously, most of the funding from the federal government grants, these are meant to deliver services from federal and state programs such as the USDA Rural Development and the Small Business Administration. Some government grants are available for small businesses, but they are designed for very specific programs. For example, the Small Business and Innovative Research Program, the SBIR, offers grants to help small businesses perform research and development that addresses the nation's most critical and scientific engineering needs. These needs span the technology spectrum, from aviation and agriculture to medicine and manufacturing. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, manages the Management and Technical Assistance Services Program, which provides grants to existing small businesses that provide management and technical assistance services to other small businesses. The USDA also provides grants to help farmers develop housing for year-round or migrant workers, the Farm Labor Housing Program. So you see, some federal programs offer grants to small businesses, but it's not so individuals can start a business. The grants are given to existing small businesses that will use the funds for a very specific purpose, and that purpose is meant to benefit the economy or society in some way. So state and city government grants, most small businesses, these grants are for like retail, and they'll come from state or city agencies that focus on small business and economic development. For example, the Indian Equity Fund Small Business Grant, IEF, that's managed by the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development, the New Mexico Regional Development Corporation, that has 2 grant programs for small businesses. One of those grants is a micro grant for individually owned businesses, and the other is only for small businesses owned by the tribe. Upon closer examination of these grant programs, you'll also notice the following characteristics which are common amongst grant programs, which is corporate grant programs. Sorry. There are also cases where private businesses will provide grants as a way to increase awareness about their products and services. And these are things like what Stacia was talking about, but on a more, a broader spectrum, like the FedEx grant, small business grant contest. In this contest, you apply, and then if you make it through the different rounds of competition, then you're expected to win votes on your business application. So this is more like a promotional grant that FedEx uses to get people aware of all the good stuff that they're doing by getting us, the applicants, to then solicit all of our friends and our connections to then go in and vote for our business plan. So these are awesome, especially if you have a really big social group or like social media just a lot of people that follow you on social media. This is a great competition if you make it to that level of judging where you then get into the voting process. So there's other tribal grant programs, which I can speak a little bit more clearly about these programs. Sometimes the tribes provide some types of financial assistance. For example, there's 2 grant programs that I've personally applied for within the Colville tribes, and one of them was called an Economic Development Grant, And the other was a match savings grant, which is I contributed a certain amount of money, and then it's called an individual development account, and then I was awarded like a certain amount of money to either expand or to just start my business. And the cool thing about that program is there wasn't a ton of reporting, which typically in grants, you have a whole bunch of reporting. You have to show exactly where you're spending that grant funding. And because the grantors want to make sure that you're using the money that they are providing in the intended use, what they wanted you to use it for. The other grant that I applied for, which was the Economic Development Grant, and that was through one of my local tribal organizations. They have up to 3 $10,000 grants a year. And this is why I love what Stacia said about just seeking out like different tribal agencies and organizations to see what might be available to you. And I just happened upon this, and it was a huge application process. I had to complete the Indianpreneurship class. I had to have a completed business plan, and the business plan had to be evaluated by our local native CDFI, and they had to give it the stamp of approval that it was a viable business opportunity, that I wouldn't just be relying on the grant money to sustain my business, but my business would eventually sustain itself. The grant money was used to do a business expansion. And after it went through that process, then it had to go through a whole bunch of other processes, and I had to complete another course on financial literacy, and then I finally got approved. And then once I was awarded the grant, and I was able to upgrade some equipment and do a whole bunch of cool stuff for my business, for marketing, and use that money in that way. The only reporting that I have to do is at the end of the year, I have to give them an assessment to show the growth and how that grant supported and helped my business to do bigger and better things. So how do grants work? Grants can be for specific types of businesses. The Indian Equity Fund, for example, is only open to businesses owned by a person who is a citizen of federal recognized tribes. There are some cases where a grant might only be offered to businesses in certain industries, such as agriculture or aerospace. And grants are often for very specific activities and purchases. Some grants require you to spend the money on something specific, like a piece of equipment, or to send employees through training programs. So the grant may not define specific activity in the request for proposal. You'll have to clearly explain how the funds are going to be used when you submit your grant proposal. An example of that, I applied for an artist grant because I'm a photographer, and what we had to do was provide not only an extensive outline of how my project will unfold, but also a detailed budget of how I was going to spend those funds. And also I had to, once I was awarded the grant, I had to also report on every activity that I did throughout the process. And there was a quarterly and an end of year reporting process. But it was a $5,000 grant that I was able to use to also get more equipment, because camera equipment isn't inexpensive when you're a professional photographer. So it was really great, but just keep in mind that, and also anyway, so I had to have a specific project for this grant. That's the point that I was trying to get to. And that specific project was to create some documented images of some indigenous foods in my area. And so I had to be very detailed about how that grant was going to help me in that project. The grants are typically small, and usually they range anywhere from like $500 to about $2,500. And they often require match funds, which is very much like what I did with the individual development account. And they range from an 8-to-1 match to a 2-to-1 match. So it just looking into those programs, and I don't know if Dorian can say if they have any IDA programs in their organizations that he could talk about. but that's where you contribute a certain amount of money, and then the grant would match funds. And they're primarily awarded to existing businesses. Most of the grants that I won were not for startup. I had already been bootstrapping my business, working a full-time job, and working my business on the side. And then as my business started to gain momentum, I was able to then go in and apply for these different grants. So keep in mind that they're not always for a startup, but they're out there. They can find them, but they're not the easiest to find. And sometimes grants are non-monetary, and what that means is it's in the form of technical assistance, education, and support, which is super important when you're starting up a business. So, some key takeaways is, one, there are few grants available for individual business owners to apply for. If you're a nonprofit, that's a whole other game, but for individual business owners, there aren't very many. There are grants available, but most often they're given to existing businesses. Getting a grant is an extremely competitive process, and it's also extremely time intensive. So if you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to writing grants, then you need to add that to your budget so you can hire somebody else to do it. The application process will likely require you to provide a lot of information, including current financial information about your business. And once you receive a grant, there's always some sort of reporting requirements. And that's all I have for you all. That was a big mouthful.
Wow, I am
wasn't
just
gonna be
so
able to take up
impressed
enough
by
time.
everybody's knowledge that they're able to share. I think that we were able to just key in on some very interesting information from Dorian and from Roxanne. I know for me as a Native entrepreneur, I've learned so much just sitting here and taking notes and absorbing all of this information. And I do want to be able, during my expansion for Nez Perce Tourism, I do want to be able to give back to the CDFI because they provided so much resources for me as far as even just, confidence, business planning, and things like that. And so that is something that I do want to be able to give back to the CDFI rather than my local bank or financial institution. And then also just the information that Dorian had talked about and making sure that we have these that we understand, our articles of incorporation and that my business is set up right or your business is set up right to be able to put yourself in a position to receive a loan. And then also that huge misconception of, there's only grants available for nonprofits. And if you're not a nonprofit, go ahead and keep stepping because there isn't anything available for you. And that's not the case. There are grant opportunities available for individual Native American business owners. And so that's really inspiring for me as an entrepreneur. And it really helps start jump starting my goals to be able to set a time aside to make sure that I can fulfill these grants and that I know exactly what they mean in their submittal and what they're asking for and that those align with what the grant opportunity is. But again, I would just like to thank IDRS Acorn Project for hosting this great webinar series. We are just halfway through. Our next webinar series is session 7 and it's Avenues for Advertising Cultural Tourism Services, and that one is scheduled for April 7th. So same time, same place. We hope that you can join us. Also, we provided downloadable files. There's a copy of the CDI certification list there, and then also resources to myself, Nez Perce Tourism, the IDRS Acorn Project. They also have another webinar series that they're running parallel to this one, and that one's neat, and it's talking about it's huge right now in the tourism market. I'm drawing a blank. It's for people who own your own home, or you can rent out your facilities to guests, or oh my goodness, Lynn, what is the name? Help me out here. Airbnb. They're doing a webinar series parallel to this one, and it's an Airbnb and how you can get started with your own. So even if you have a backyard, that's something that you can offer is a cultural experience by setting up teepees. And that could be an Airbnb opportunity. So whatever it is that you might be interested in, I think the RDRS Acorn Project might have something for you. And they also have on their website a list of past webinars that they've done, which is very helpful. Also, IANTA, they are a wonderful resource for cultural tourism, the USDA Rural Development, and then another funder is California Governor's Office for Economics. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at our Session 7, Avenues for Advertising Cultural Tourism Services. Dorian and Roxanne, you guys rock. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Thank you.